There's a quiet grief in knowing you've outgrown a place, but still waking up there every day. You prayed, you obeyed, you waited, and yet the doors didn't open. The change didn't come, and the silence got louder. Somewhere along the way, you started wondering if maybe this is it. Maybe this ache, this cycle, this invisible wall is just your life now. But listen closely. The ache has a message. You weren't meant to stay stuck this long. What you're calling delay may actually be divine exposure. Not punishment, but preparation. Not rejection, but realignment. Because cycles only hurt this much when you've outgrown them. You've been circling something that no longer fits. And heaven has noticed. This week, yes, this week, you will begin to see what's really been holding you. Not just circumstances, but agreements, beliefs, disguises that fear wears to keep you obedient to something God never required. You don't need more effort. You need revelation. And that's what this is. A whisper in the noise. A gentle voice interrupting the scroll to say, "Stay. Don't move on just yet. There is something God wants to show you. Something you're finally ready to see. And it begins right here, right now, with this holy discomfort that tells you you weren't made to stay stuck. Let this be the moment you stop blaming yourself for the silence and start listening for what it's trying to reveal. Even now, you are being led out. You didn't imagine the tension. It's real. That sense that something's shifting, even though nothing around you has moved. You feel it in your body, the tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You hear it in your prayers, the quiet plea, "God, show me what I can't see." There's a reason you're restless. A reason why this week feels heavier. Not because you're breaking down, but because something sacred is breaking through. This is not just another tired Monday. It's a divine intersection, a holy interruption. God is preparing to reveal what your heart wasn't ready to face before. And it won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. But it will be clear. He's coming for the presented, the real thing, the unspoken agreement, the subtle compromise, the quiet fear dressed up as responsibility. He's not trying to shame you. He's trying to free you. So if things feel off, if your plans are crumbling or your routine suddenly feels hollow, don't panic. Pause. The interruption is mercy. The shift is love. You don't have to figure everything out. You just have to stop pretending you're fine. Because you're not. Not fully. And God sees that. He's not angry. He's near. And He's ready. So stay with this moment. Stay with this whisper. You're already halfway to freedom. And if you need reminders like this, holy pauses in the middle of your week, subscribe to Calm Called, not for noise, but for the voice that keeps calling you back. Something sacred is beginning. Don't miss it. It looks like movement. You wake up, you try, you pray, you plan, but deep down, you're not moving forward. You're walking in circles, doing what feels spiritual, doing what used to work, but it's not working now. This isn't rebellion. It's not laziness. It's the ache of someone who's been faithful but stuck. And no one talks about this part. When you do everything you know to do, but your spirit still feels caged. You've been performing, not progressing. Staying busy, hoping momentum will become breakthrough. But spiritual busy work is still delay in disguise. What if you don't need more effort, but clarity? Not more prayers, but one honest pause? The circles end when truth begins. Because this is not about doing more. It's about seeing what's misaligned. The small agreements, the quiet assumptions, the inherited beliefs that were never yours to carry. And this is the week where they begin to break. Not because you pushed harder, but because God whispered deeper. And this time, you were still enough to hear Him. You were never meant to figure it out alone. And you won't leave this place the way you came in. A holy undoing is near. A revelation that brings release. And the next step isn't out there. It's already rising within. So stay. The circle is breaking. And forward is finally opening. Stillness can feel like punishment, especially when your heart is willing, especially when you've been asking God to move, but all you hear is delay. You assume something's wrong with you, or that maybe God's waiting for you to get it right. But what if that's not it? What if the delay isn't rejection, but diagnosis? Not silence, but a signal? When God withholds movement, He's not being cruel. He's pointing to something misaligned, something small, but sacred, like a door that won't close because it's just slightly off, like a rhythm that's just a beat behind heaven's pace. Sometimes we keep trying to push forward, but God is gently calling us to pause and notice. Because the thing holding us back isn't always sin. It might be self-reliance. It might be a belief that feels wise, but is actually rooted in fear. The misalignment is subtle. You're still praying, still worshiping, still showing up, but your pace is anxious. Your posture is tight. Your steps are cautious, not surrendered. And God in mercy doesn't bless a rhythm that would exhaust you. So He waits. He highlights. He lets the doors stay closed, not as punishment, but as a call to listen more closely. This is the kind of love that doesn't rush. The kind of guidance that says, I'd rather you be delayed in me than arrive broken without me. So ask Him, not, when will you move? But, what are you revealing through this pause? Because the moment you align, really align, with trust instead of fear, with grace instead of striving, movement becomes inevitable. The silence was never the absence of God. It was the invitation to hear Him differently. And maybe this is the week you finally hear what He's been highlighting all along. Fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It doesn't come screaming with panic. It comes cloaked in caution, in phrases like, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe I should wait until I'm sure. What if I'm just being emotional? And it sounds wise. It sounds spiritual, but something beneath it feels tight, small, restrictive. Because it's not discernment. It's fear wearing holy clothes. We've made agreements with fear that look like maturity. We call them boundaries when they're really barriers. We call them wisdom when they're really wounds speaking. Somewhere along the way, you decided that safety mattered more than surrender. And now your faith looks responsible, but it doesn't move. It doesn't breathe. This is how calling gets delayed. Not through rebellion, but through self-preservation. Not through loud disobedience, but through quiet hesitation disguised as holiness. God never asked you to earn His timing. He asked you to trust it. And when fear starts calling the shots, we start editing our obedience to make it feel more comfortable. But you weren't called to comfortable. You were called to communion, to movement in step with the Spirit, even when the next step isn't guaranteed. And that's the key. Wisdom is not the absence of risk. It's the presence of God in the risk. It's peace in motion, even if the terrain is unfamiliar. So if you've been stuck, check the voice you've been calling wise. Is it grounded in peace or paralyzed by fear? Because some of what you're calling discernment is really delay. Some of what you've labeled careful is actually spiritual avoidance. This isn't to shame you. It's to set you free, to help you recognize where you made an agreement with fear and break it. Because once fear loses its disguise, you'll see it for what it is. 0. 5. A thief of momentum, a silencer of calling, a false prophet in your own mind. And this week, it gets exposed. Gently, finally, completely. We all avoid something, even the most faithful hearts, even the strongest believers. There's always a part of the calling that feels too big, too costly, too close. So we delay, we distract, we serve around the edges, but never touch the center. It looks like obedience. It feels like effort. But deep inside, we know we're circling something we were meant to face. This is the hardest mirror, the sacred question. What am I avoiding? It's rarely a task. It's usually a truth. Something you know, but haven't been ready to say out loud. Maybe it's the conversation you've postponed, the gift you've buried, the grief you've never named, the direction God whispered, but you labeled too much. Avoidance isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden inside busy calendars and noble intentions. But avoidance delays healing. God isn't asking you to run headfirst into everything at once, but He is asking for one moment of honesty, one pause long enough to say, Lord, this is the part I haven't given you. Because the moment you admit what you've been avoiding, mercy rushes in. Not condemnation, not shame, but the nearness of a God who already knew and still wanted your yes. This is where breakthrough begins, not in strength, but in surrender. Not in clarity, but in confession. So what are you avoiding? Not as a punishment, but as an invitation. Because what you've buried may be the very thing God wants to breathe life into. And what if that unspoken weight is the very thing holding you back? You don't need to fix it all today. You just need to name it. Open the door. Let the light in. Even now, He's near, and He's not asking for perfection, just permission. We've been told to be strong, to stay composed, to hold it together in the name of faith. But what if strength isn't the requirement for breakthrough? What if the key is brokenness? Not collapse, not despair, but the sacred unraveling of all the ways you've tried to carry this alone. God doesn't move through masks. He moves through surrender. And sometimes Breakthrough is less about momentum and more about falling apart in the right hands. You keep thinking you need to be ready. That breakthrough is for the healed, the organized, the emotionally stable. But that's not how grace works. It doesn't wait for you to qualify. It meets you right in the unraveling, right in the moment where your hands are empty and your heart finally whispers, "I can't do this alone." This is the paradox of breakthrough. 5. It comes not when you conquer, but when you collapse in trust. When you stop performing, when you stop rehearsing strength and start revealing truth. God is not impressed by composure. He's moved by honesty, by the cry that says, "Help me let go of what I thought I had to hold." Brokenness doesn't repel God. It draws him close, because the cracks are where his light enters. And what feels like failure may actually be the soil of freedom. So what if today you stopped hiding the mess? What if you believed that breakthrough doesn't wait for your life to be picture perfect, but comes in the middle of your actual reality? Let the tears come. Let the defenses fall. Let the illusion of ready dissolve. Because what's holding you back might not be the situation. It might be the pressure to seem unshaken when your soul is begging for rest. Breakthrough begins with brokenness, and brokenness is holy when placed in his hands. Faith isn't always a shout. Sometimes it's a still posture, a whispered yes, a quiet refusal to give up, even when nothing seems to be changing. We often think trust looks like bold declarations, like stepping into the Red Sea with dramatic certainty. But more often, trust looks like waiting in the dark, not because you're sure of the outcome, but because you're sure of who holds it. It's the kind of faith that doesn't chase results. It rests in relationship. It's less about the chains falling immediately, and more about knowing they will. In time, in mercy, in perfect rhythm. Sometimes, the chains don't fall when you shout. They fall when you surrender. When your heart stops begging for escape and starts leaning into presence. This is the sacred ground where trust is refined, not in outcomes, but in your outlook. Because the enemy doesn't just want to trap your life. He wants to trap your attention, to get you so focused on what's not moving that you forget to notice the one who hasn't moved from you. And right here, right now, God is closer than your questions, closer than your frustration, closer than the chains. You don't have to wait perfectly. You just have to wait honestly, with breath, with surrender, with the kind of stillness that says, even if nothing moves today, I'll still trust you. Because that kind of trust shifts atmospheres. It opens the way, not through force, but through faith that refuses to flinch. The breakthrough may not come all at once, but heaven notices the one who stays faithful in silence. And God always responds to surrendered hearts. So don't rush this moment. Don't despise the stillness. You are not stuck. You are being taught to walk in trust before the chains drop. This isn't the first time your soul has stirred. This isn't the first time you've felt this pull, this inner knowing that something must shift. You've heard this whisper before. In the middle of worship, in the silence after a hard day, in moments you tried to dismiss as emotional, but something deeper was speaking. The Spirit's been calling you, softly, repeatedly, not with pressure, but with persistence. You know the feeling, like a warmth that rises out of nowhere, a phrase that lingers longer than it should, a tear that falls without reason. This is the holy language of the whisper. And even when you didn't act on it, even when you postponed obedience, God didn't stop calling, because He doesn't give up on the ones He loves. This time feels different, not because the whisper is louder, but because you are quieter. Ready, not in perfection, but in posture. There's a moment when a whisper becomes a turning point. And for you, this may be that moment. You don't need another confirmation. You need to remember what God already said, what He already showed you, what your soul already agreed with, but fear tried to erase. This isn't new information. It's old truth returning with new grace. Because when God whispers, He's not trying to convince, He's calling forth what He already placed in you. He's reactivating what life tried to bury. So let the whisper speak again. Let it reach the places performance couldn't. Let it become louder than your excuses and gentler than your resistance. The same voice that stirred you before is stirring you again. And this time, you're listening with your whole heart. The whisper hasn't changed, but you have, and that's why breakthrough is near. This is the moment when something breaks, not with noise, not with drama, but with truth. There's a shift in the air, not around you, but within you. Something that once felt stronger than you suddenly feels small, powerless. Because what once held you, that fear, that cycle, that silent agreement, no longer has the right to. The turning point isn't when your situation changes. It's when you stop submitting to what was never meant to define you. You've spent years navigating limits that were never yours, trying to be good enough, trying to stay safe, trying not to fail. But all along, God wasn't asking for your safety. He was asking for your surrender. And now, the surrender has come. Not loud, not flashy, but final, full. You are no longer in agreement with fear. You are no longer trying to earn grace. You are no longer hiding from what God already sees and still calls worthy. This is the sacred shift, the moment when what bound you loses its voice, when the chains don't need to shatter because your permission is what held them there. And now, you've revoked it, with clarity, with peace, with authority not your own, but borrowed from the one who calls you free. So breathe. The weight has lifted. The fog is clearing. What once defined you no longer holds the pen. This is what breakthrough looks like, not a dramatic escape, but a quiet declaration from the inside out. You are free, and not just emotionally, spiritually, legally, eternally. The page is turning, and you are no longer writing from captivity. You're writing from clarity, from calling, from grace. Let's pause now, not to end, but to exhale, to release what's been heavy, to bless what's been revealed, to receive what's always been yours. Pray with me. Whisper it slowly. Let every word fall gently over the places still healing. God of mercy, I don't want to walk in circles anymore. You've shown me where I've made quiet agreements with fear. where I've tried to earn love instead of resting in it, where I've avoided the one thing you were gently asking me to face. I see now, you weren't being silent to punish me. You were being patient so I could hear. So I release every chain that no longer has the right to hold me. I release the lie that I have to be perfect. I release the need to strive, to prove, to carry what was never mine. And I receive your grace, your clarity, your alignment, not as a reward, but as the gift you always intended to give. I say yes again to movement, to trust, to walking forward, not in pressure, but in peace. God, where I've been held back, move freely now. Where I've been afraid to look deeper, shine your light. Where I've grown numb from waiting, breathe again. Even if I don't see the full picture, I trust you, even now, especially now. Thank you for staying when I doubted, for whispering when I wasn't ready, and for calling me forward, not because I earned it, but because I'm yours. Amen. And if this prayer found you where you are, if this space felt safe, gentle, real, stay close. Because calm, called, is here, not to demand more from you, but to remind you what God is already doing within you. Subscribe if your heart needs this rhythm, not just today, but in the days ahead when the whisper returns and you want to be ready to hear it. This is not the end. It's the first step forward, clearer, lighter, and no longer stuck.